Nope, that didn't happen.
All right. Let's take off from there.
Yikes. Oh my gosh. So, you're ready to buy.
You're ready to buy.
How do you decide if you should buy a home, a townhome, a condo,
A condo?
or maybe even a multifamily property?
Who knows?
Well, to find the answer, one must look inward.
One must look inward. What am I looking at?
Chad.
He's looking at the world, dude. He's
I was
looking at the spirits.
at the camera.
He's looking at the house.
Well, then why do we have four of them?
This is Intellectually. I'm Rob.
This is Chad.
And this is the show where we teach you how to hold us, the professionals, accountable in real estate. Let's try that go. One more time, that start. What did you say?
So, you're ready to buy.
Yes.
But how do you decide if you should buy a house, a townhome, a condo, or maybe even a multifamily property?
Oh, that was good.
Well, to find the answer, one must look inward.
Inward, not outward first. You must look within. Not
I didn't
out.
write that.
I did.
I still don't know who Chad was looking at.
Who's looking at me? He's looking at you. He's looking at the spirits.
I'm looking inward.
He's looking inward. He doesn't know where to look when he's looking inward. He's like, that's how.
No, but for real. All right, when you are
This is just water, by the way. Oh, turn that down.
in the market to buy a property, there are so many different options of the type of properties that you can buy. Right? So how do you know which one is the right fit for you?
Yeah.
Well,
It's a question a lot of buyers don't really realize they should probably tackle in the very beginning, right? And you were right about looking within, right? Mm-hmm. It's not about the property as much as it's about what you're actually trying to get done in the current state that you're in. So we kind of put together a couple, I guess, couple different genres / classifications to see if you're able to put yourself into those classifications. And then we're just going to dig deeper into it, right?
exactly. So a few of the different types of properties that we're at least going to talk about today are single-family home properties. We're going to be talking about townhomes. We're going to be talking about condos. We're going to be talking about 2 to 4 unit multifamily properties.
Yep.
Leaving commercial out of this. So we're like you
try
said,
to keep commercial in its own category because that's a whole can of worms. We're not going to get as in depth like villas or maybe like different owning lands and building a trailer on top of it. We're going to kind of leave those out of it because those can be, once again, their own can of worms. We're going to keep it very basic on the broad spectrum of the 3 to 4 types of houses you might property you might end up owning were you to enter the housing market, right? And leave with the property.
Sure. So as a buyer, there are a few questions. Thanks, Murph. There are a few questions that you should ask yourself as a buyer before you purchase a property, right? First one, I would say, am I buying this primarily for lifestyle or financial wealth building? I think that's a very important question for us to ask, right?
Lifestyle versus wealth building. So elaborate on that. I'm going to kind of start you off a tiny bit.
Well, just let me run through the questions.
Yeah, do it. Sorry.
All the elaboration will come.
I love it.
All right. So number 2 is, do I want to handle maintenance? Do I want to handle repairs? Do I want to handle yard work? Or would I rather have it pay an HOA to do all of that? Am I okay with sharing walls? Am I okay with sharing parking? Other amenities? Again, things that you need to consider. Monthly payment upside comfort versus long-term upside. Would you rather have predictability with your payments or potential surprise costs that you have down the line? Again, another important question: how long do you plan on staying in the property? It's an important piece. And I would say, finally, right, a lot of buyers, I feel like, don't ask themselves this question: is, but what is my exit strategy when I would decide that I am done with this property, whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years, 15, whatever the case? Do you have an exit strategy, and does it make sense for you?
Buying, selling, renting, or even, passing it on to one of your kids or something like that long time down the road.
So first we'll start with, I would say a lot of the most common that we see, that your typical buyers will see are the single family homes, right? It is essentially, you buying a property, and there's a home or a building on that property. You own that property and that building, correct? And everything below it, right?
And I see this as the most daunting one that scares people out of a home ownership the most, right? Usually when I see first-time home buyers, friends, family, or colleagues that are like weighing back and forth, I'm scared to get in the housing market. I'm scared to make that big of an investment and find out the hard way. I should have made some other decisions. So on that point, maybe we should speak to these. These are from St. Charles, represent.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Oktoberfest, but it is only water. In regards to that, though, I usually see those individuals come back to me, and we'll approach this idea and the answer to this later, but they're like, should I start with a townhome or should I start with buying a condo first, or should I jump into the deep end and get a house, right? So I'll let you keep going, but that kind of is what I experience when it comes to clients or friends and family that are still on the edge of whether they want to actually purchase a house.
So we'll start with some of the pros. I want you to elaborate too on some of these pros, but of course, I'd say main reason you own it. You own it outright, right?
Fee simple, absolute.
Exactly. So you get to control
Unless there's deed restrictions.
You can control the space. You control the landscaping, the outside of the property and the inside of the property. You have full control over that. Which, if you want extra or additional privacy or anything along those lines, you have that privacy because you're not sharing it with anybody else. Another huge pro is the resale appeal on a single family home. Just like you're buying a single family home, is going to be the same, most likely the same reason that the buyer of this property, when you go to sell it, is going to want it. Right?
Highest equitable return. Yep.
Highest equitable return.
You pronounced that 10 times better than me. I was tripping.
Some cons, again. Well, you are responsible for the whole property. That means you're responsible for all the maintenance, the repairs, the yard work. Yeah, all of that under the sun. Once you sign those documents on closing, they are your responsibility.
Absolutely.
And all of those typically come with a higher cost. Not only that, but you got to consider insurance. You got to, not that you're not paying these with the other, but you got to consider the insurance, the property taxes, potential HOA fees, depending on what kind of neighborhood you're in, all of these other things, right? And just because you do own a single family home, you also have to be careful because an HOA does not, owning a single family home and having the rights to that does not prevent the HOA from also enforcing its rules and restrictions on that as well. So it's also very important to do your research before going on to that, because a lot of people like the idea of having more control over their homes, and then they get into a neighborhood HOA is super strict, and you can't even paint the house the color that you want, can't even put a fence up, so many different things that you need to look into. So I would say single family homes, knowing this, are best for long-term buyers, right? Someone who plans on living in a property for a lifetime, they're going to live in it for a long period of time, and they're going to utilize that property. Families are very common in this, going to a single family home, but anyone, obviously, for a single family home, depending on the lifestyle that you want to live, is a benefit, especially for those who want essentially full control over their property.
Yep. And I guess when you say single family home, obviously single family home could be a townhome, and it could end up being a condo as well. You're talking about a single plat with one property on it. You're not sharing or having any obligations with anybody else. One building, right?
Correct.
One building on one piece of land.
I'm not sharing my backyard, my courtyard.
You don't have any accountabilities to another individual. And that being said, when I say highest in equity, right? We'll get into it, and you guys will slowly start to realize the difference between these and maybe a condo, a townhome, or even, obviously, a rental property, just due to the fact that you have the most control. You have the most control. You can say what you want to do when you want to do it. And that's what I mean by highest equitable return. A lot of people might say, well, what about a multi-unit duplex that you're renting out? You could get a lot of equity from that. But I would argue you still have less control because you're viable and accountable to the tenants.
Well, and getting that equity in a multifamily, it's going to take some work.
And as well, you're accountable to your tenants. You can't just show up and do what you want. They might be living there. So what's the next property?
So the next one, we have townhomes and condos, which a lot of people may be a little bit confused on exactly what the difference is between the two. So we'll start with townhomes, but I'd like you to at least elaborate on the difference between a condo and a townhome, because they are different.
Yeah. So the biggest difference is title, how it's owned by the individuals that possess the actual plat or the property itself. You're going to see townhomes traditionally in that idea where it's a 2-story. property, but one difference between the property type that Chad was just talking about was it is owned by, there's certain parts of the property that are shared, if that makes sense. So say you have a building that is like a duplex and there's one roof covering both. They kind of share that roof. And because of that, there needs to be some kind of organization or third-party accountability that makes it so both parties can't have to take accountability for that roof. And that's where you get that townhome idea or townhouse idea. They're usually sharing walls. You'll see like a strip of houses that look like they're connected to each other, and that's a townhouse. So it's almost the entry level of there's a physical thing that I have to share with somebody else, and we need to come up with an agreement, traditionally an HOA, in which holds us each accountable if something goes wrong with that thing, such as a wall, patio, piece of land, or a roof are the most traditional routes. When you get to a condo, it's almost like the next level, right, of that in-depth ownership, and it's one of the most restrictive kind of titles that you have. Under a condo title, you own the internals of the property. Those are your responsibilities. But externally, it's joint between you and all the other owners. So that's where you're going to see, like, maybe if you go down to the city and there's like maybe 200 units in a large skyscraper building, each person owns their individual apartment under a condominium type ownership, in which they are all technically responsible for everything outside of their property. They're all conclusively responsible, but inside their individual property, they are responsible sole. Like they're the sole responsibility for that.
I would say the easiest way to distinguish if you're looking at properties, find out when you go to get your insurance what your insurance is supposed to be covering.
Yes.
In this, because that's one thing that really helped me understand.
I would go to your real estate agent.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But again, looking inwards and trying to figure out the difference between a condo and a townhome. When you look at it from the insurance side, you get insurance on a condo. They are only insuring the inside of the property. You go to get insurance on a townhome that you own, you are insuring the interior and the exterior of it. So essentially what you're saying, though, or I want to clarify, is the property itself is not what distinguishes it between a condo and a townhome. The physical property itself, it's the ownership and the accountabilities behind who is responsible for what really distinguishes the difference between the two.
Traditionally with a townhome, there's 1 to 3 distinctive things that everybody's accountable to handling jointly, right? In a condominium, it's everything external to your unit, right? So inside, once I walk through the doors, I'm in charge of everything. But once I go outside, everybody's got a kind of like a jointly accountability for those external entities, if that makes sense. So even if it's like a strip, everybody's responsible for the roof, the patios, the parking lots. If there's a small road leading in there that, that condo has accountability for, then all of you have to conclusively take responsibility for it. And it is still kind of organized and controlled by an HOA, homeowners association.
So when we talk about townhomes, of course, some pros are they're typically lower cost than single family homes. They're typically less maintenance, or at least shared maintenance per se in some situations, depending on how it's set up. Again, going to the cons is you're most likely going to be dealing with an HOA. And if you don't have a townhome with an HOA, I don't even know how that would work.
So there are kind of townhomes with HOAs, without HOAs. There's a couple of them in St. Louis. And you just got to get a specific lender that will be okay with setting a loan where the insurer, where the insurance is going to be loosely adapted to some of those things that everybody is accountable to. So there was a property, it was more on an apartment level, but it wasn't a condominium. It was self-ownership without an HOA or any kind of organization there. And obviously we had some trouble getting a lender because they were like, well, I mean, this property has to be insured. We want to make sure if case something happens that they can pay the money back. And if it burns down and there's no insurance on the property, then they won't be able to pay their loan back and we won't have an asset to hold it. So then when you go to the insurance and they're like, well, what's the HOA? I only want to insure these areas and I'm not covering this entire roof that everybody's sharing. that's where it gets chaotic when you don't have an HOA. So you're going to have to go a little bit more in depth when it comes to finding your insurance provider, finding your lender that's okay with that insurance provider and giving the loan to that property. But it is possible. You just, once again, got to be proactive on those areas.
A few more cons with the townhome. We'll go back to the point, a little bit less privacy. The equity growth isn't always quite there as much as a single family
So
home.
you should elaborate on the equity growth. What do you mean by that?
Well, townhomes typically don't raise in value quite as heavily or as, I guess, as quickly or as aggressively as single family homes. Why? Because they're not as desired, I would argue.
Well, you also can't do as much.
And
right?
Again, why it's going back to the point why they're less desired is because you can't do. You have a little bit less control over what you're able to do, because not only do you have to figure out what you want to do, but you have to get, your neighbors or your, I guess, common tenants.
Your HOA to agree with what you want to do. Yeah.
Yes.
You can't just go in and redo and put one of our friends' house. He was not a fan of his yard, but they got a good deal on the front yard because it was so unaddressed and everything. And then we were able during a weekend, able to come in, completely re-landscape everything, and probably add $15,000 to $20,000 in value to that property just from what we decided to do a day before. Good luck if you have an HOA, right? Exactly. They probably wouldn't mind that, but it's just more difficult. You got to go through the approvals and everything. And if it gets denied, that's less equity control. So yeah, it brings the price down, but it's also bringing the price down for a whole nother reason. And that's buyability, right? When you have a property with so many extracurricular costs, it's going to be hard to justify getting a high loan or, high mortgage for that property. So if somebody's coming in and they're like, I can afford a $150,000 house. You're like, that's awesome. And then they go, well, should I buy this simple fee simple absolute property over here, or should I buy this townhome? You're like, well, one has a $400 a month HOA fee, and all of a sudden that affordability on your $150,000 house changes drastically, because even though the house is worth the same, your mortgage is $400 in difference. So a person coming along trying to invest in that is going to have a hard time convincing the lender to allow them to buy that same $150,000 house with an additional $400 a month HOA fee. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the buyability itself, you're washing out a lot of your buyers. So what do you end up having to do when your buyability goes down? You have to bring the price down to attract those buyers back. So now you're like, my mortgage, that's $400 more, I have to bring the price down to equal out that mortgage. Now, you don't got to completely equal it out, right? Because you're getting the benefits of the condominium, but like it or not, affordability is affordability, right? So I just wanted to make that point. What were you? Did you have a question? No? Cool. Raising your hand, you were stretching.
So moving on. So we got through single family homes. We got through townhomes. Next is condos, which again, different than a townhome. A condo, again, it's a type, it's essentially the type of ownership that you have on the property, right? For as far as a condo goes, the owner of the property owns the inside of the walls. They don't own anything outside, anything on the exterior. Essentially meaning the HOA handles absolutely everything on the outside after that. Whether that's the roof, the landscaping, your driveway cracks, whatever the case may be, that is intended to be handled by the HOA.
Yeah. Can I give an example of that? Please. Versus? So obviously, if you have a property that's titled as a townhome versus a property that's titled as a condo, you're not promised, if you guys share the roof, you're not promised to share obligations to correcting the roof, right? So we had a townhome in O'Fallon, and the bylaws in the HOA were simply saying, hey, if the roof gets damaged, yes, we'll cover it, but that's only if your insurance doesn't cover it. So if you get your insurance claim denied, then we will partake in assisting the HOA funds to correcting that roof. What does that mean? If you get hail damage, likely your insurance company is going to cover it. And that's your money. That's raising your insurance and everything. So don't always think, oh, we're sharing the roof. I don't have to have full obligation on that. Make sure you read your bylaws. Make sure you review the bylaws with an attorney or your real estate agent. Because unlike a condo, like Chad just said, even the things that you share might not be obligated by all parties, right? So keep that in mind.
So again, some of the pros, going back to the pros of a condo. Again, no exterior maintenance. You're essentially eliminating all of that to the HOA that you, again, are paying for. So it's not like they're doing it for free.
Yep.
You're paying, someone's paying for it, and it is you through your HOA fee. But again, if you're an individual or you're a family or whoever it is that wants to come in and does not want to do any exterior maintenance, condo might be the right move for you. On top of that, condos typically have an immense shared amenities, right? Whether it's a pool, whether it's a common space, whatever the case may be.
Those prices go up, though.
Yeah,
your HOA
of course.
fees go up if you
Right.
got those.
Again, you pay for everything, but you're paying it indirectly.
Somebody's funding it. Yeah.
Yes, you're paying it indirectly through your HOA. But again, if that's one thing that you'd rather have the peace of mind to be able to benefit from all of these amenities and all of this yard work and exterior stuff, yet you want to benefit, yet you don't want to do any of the work, and you're willing to pay for it, condo. Perfect.
Yep. No, I like it. One reason why condos effectively are still lower price, even though you'd be getting things like a pool, a gym, other amenities that technically you are paying for. Thus, you would be like, well, if I'm paying for those, then shouldn't I get return on the equity? It goes back to that mentality of controlled money is a lot more valuable than uncontrolled money. And an HOA, even though it's nice and luxurious because they handle those certain things, it still isn't controlled money. It's not yours. You can't build a pool and you can't handle the pool how you want it because it's already either going to be there or not there. So whether you're paying for it or not. And that's why the price and value might go down a little bit.
And there are a lot of pros living in kind of people with busy lifestyles, people who like to travel. If you're looking at downsize, you simply don't want to do any maintenance or yard work, or you're just tired of doing all that. There are a lot of benefits living in a condo. But again, if you buy a condo and you plan to have this extravagant exit plan and make a ton of money, you're most likely not going to see that.
Might not get return on that controlled equity like you're hoping. Yeah. You're going to see less return on your investment if you decide to redo the kitchen, if you decide to redo the living room, if you decide to do that. Not that you won't see return, because once again, if it's a really bad condo in really bad condition and you're in a really nice area, you could see some good quality return. We're not saying not to look into it, but you're just traditionally going to see less return versus just owning a house outright, right?
Plus, if you like customizing the exterior of your property, good luck.
Yeah. Exactly.
Good luck, because again, that HOA is not going anywhere.
Yeah. And that's the point of a condo. It's to not have to customize the exterior. So it's
and again, really quick too, that's the point of an HOA too. A lot of people have a lot of negative feelings about an HOA, but people also don't see the value in it. And again, HOAs, in a lot of ways, a good HOA is designed to uphold and build the equity in the neighborhood. They want it clean. They want to make sure that your trash isn't everywhere. They want to make sure you didn't paint your house, bright red or whatever the case may be.
Put up a big Gumby sculpture in your front yard.
You don't have all this scrap metal in your yard, right? Yeah. Well, all of that stuff diminishes the values around the property. HOAs, a good HOA is
keep things in line. Yep. And that you said a good HOA. That's an important thing to also address. Don't leave the investigation of the HOA all completely up to your agent. Definitely have your agent investigate the HOA, look into it, bylaws, try to speak to them, but at least go to your agent and be like, how's communication, right? Usually HOAs are managed by professional property management companies, and I would look into them. How good are they at communication? How responsive are they? And maybe speak to some of the neighbors that you'll gain if you move to this property, and just be like, what's life like living here and dealing with the HOA? If you find out they're like, man, the HOA is awful, they're overpriced, they misspend, they don't organize their funding correctly, and they're using tech that's way out of date, that could be a huge hit on your resale value, and that could be a huge headache when you move in, right? So it's also important to just check, I would say, the competency of your HOA, and it's not hard to check that. Once again, see how they respond. See what their bylaws look like. Were they printed in 1990, right? See what's going on when it comes to what kind of technologies or ways they handle their funding or their minutes behind their meetings. Like, how transparent
do
are
they have an HOA Karen?
Yeah.
Who knows?
The HOA Karen. Chad loves, so the stigma that you wrote an article about Karens, nobody likes a Karen until you put them in an HOA, right? Because you got that neighbor that's building that sculpture up in the front yard. You're like, that thing's so ugly. And the Karen you've been trying to avoid your entire career of living in that development starts walking in there. You're like, get them, Karen.
I can tell you right now,
Yeah.
when you go to sell your house in that HOA neighborhood, you're going to be like,
There's three Karens
Karen.
here.
Thanks, Karen.
There's three Karens. One lives over there and one lives over there. All increasing. What did you say? The property values? We discovered that actually go up with Karens or something.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny. The property I sold on for sale last year, we spent almost an hour and a half in the HOA office with my client before they bought the property just to quite literally talk through and see everything. It wasn't just me having the conversation. I brought them with me so they can see firsthand. They're the ones that are going to
create those relationships.
I'm not the one that's going to be dealing with it once they close, right? It's going to be them. So
And
they
that's,
need.
how much was that HOA a month, do you think?
Oh, that was. I want to say. Well, the problem is it was a year of an assessment, so it was higher than it usually.
Yeah.
I think I want to say it was like $350 to $400 normally.
So we're borderline $4,000-$5,000 plus a year, right? Well, $4,000 plus a year. That's where you should start looking into your HOA. Don't stress if your HOA is more like $10-$15 a month. I would argue you don't need to heavily look into it. It's when you start actually putting
And
money into
granted,
it.
this was in a neighborhood with lake rights that they have docks. There's
There's like St. Louis.
immense
list
of amenities that your typical neighborhoods don't have. Of course, an HOA is going to be higher because of that.
Touche. So that's when we would argue you should start looking into those HOAs. Just due to the fact that you're putting money into it. And you want to see what your return is, right?
So we've gotten through single-family homes, we've gotten through townhomes, and we've gotten through condos. I'd like you to really go in depth. So the next one we have is your multifamily, your 2 to 4 unit, whether it's a duplex, a triplex, a 4-family, right? We're not talking about commercial because commercial.
Four units or a business. Yeah, more than 4 units or a business. We could talk about that in a different podcast. That's up to you guys. Just let us know in the comments or just let us know personally if you want us to talk about commercial. We happily can. But yeah, so speaking of the investment on the residential side, I mean, our past 3 podcasts really hit in on that. So if you want to look in like how to properly invest into a investment property, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4 family, definitely look back at those previous 3 podcasts. But just to kind of sum it up, it's going to be strategic to recognize that if you're looking at buying a house and living in it, you are what the kids are calling a house hacker, right? Or buying an investment property and living in it, you're a house hacker, right? That's where you live in one unit and rent out the other second, third, or fourth units, right? And attempt to have them not only pay off your mortgage, because that's usually where the phrase house hack definition ends, but also make sure you're set up to be able to move out, rent your current unit that you were living in, and not be negative on your mortgage, if that makes sense, or negative on all your costs. So that's house hacking. It's basically a strategic form of creating a retirement plan through property.
I'm going to say, the pros in this multifamily investment in the house hacking is for the more risk adverse individuals.
It's the highest level of risk.
That are looking to build long-term financial wealth, quite simply. But the con of it is you are now a landlord. You are now in control of the property that other people live on. You have duties and obligations to them. And if you're in a house hack, they're also your neighbors.
Yeah.
And they're also your next door neighbors. You know, you're sharing a space of somewhat with them, yet you are responsible and you have a duty and obligations, again, to them. Yeah. And that does not come lightly. Building this wealth is not simply, I'm going to buy a property and find a renter and get in there and we're all said and done.
You got to know what you're doing. Yeah.
Right.
You got to know your softwares. You got to have proper understanding of how you want to handle this. The biggest thing when it comes to it, I guess we can organize it from a start. Condominium is your lease attached to your property. Townhome, you're kind of growing to more ownership of your property. Home itself, you're really, really invested in this property. You want absolute control over it, which they call fee simple absolute. And then investment property and house hacking is where you take, I would argue, the absolute understanding of what am I getting for this property? Not just what am I experiencing with this property, which are the 3 previous, right? So I guess like you were kind of hinting at, investment 1, 2, 3, or 4 families is you're most in tuned. And from that, you can then understand, depending on your lifestyle, if you have a heavily demanding job, that's going to take you 6 days a week for 45, 50 hours a day, it might not be strategic to go that far into the deep end, right? You might want to stick with the townhome or even go as far as the condo. Even though you're not going to get as much return for your investment, the return you will get is the ability to focus on what you do best, right? Your full-time job or your extracurriculars that you have. Like you said, also, if you're a heavy traveler, right? If you're in the military or you travel for a living, airline pilot, it's probably not going to be strategic to find out when you're, 7,000 miles away
that your water
heater went bad. Yeah, that's going to be tough. Now, that being said, we're not talking about investing in a property you're not going to live in, because there's plenty of, there's complete capability when it comes to buying investment property that you're not going to live in as part of your portfolio. We're talking about the 4 types of ownership in which you live in it, right? Condo, townhome, fee simple, absolute, and or you are renting out portions and living in the other, house hacking, right? From those, you're all the way in the deep end with the investment property. You might not want to be an airline pilot, right? But it can be done. It's just, you got to be strategic about it, right? When it comes to also living in a property versus that you're sharing with others, you have very, very important obligations to be non-personable and business oriented, but still be a human because you are right next to them, right? I'm not saying don't be a human when it comes to, hold on, we keep getting the camera tipped. Is that fixing there? Yep.
Merp chose a great spot to lay down.
Just bumped it again, but no worries. I guess I'll conclude it like this. Just make sure when you get involved in house hacking, you're going to be a little bit more personally involved with the property than any other form of ownership, even investing where you don't live on the premise, right? Because you have to physically be there, right?
It's a job.
It is a
It's
job.
a job.
It is a job, and you got to be a little bit more conscious because you might run into these people when you're leaving or run into them when you're going out, right? And it's just, it adds a little bit more of element versus just business is business, right? You got to add, it adds that element of, I'm your neighbor, right? But that being said, I love house hacking. You should definitely look into it. That's the last bit there. I kind of wanted to now address each of those, but I wanted to kind of run through if we can muster up a category of what kind of buyer you might be, right?
Let's do this. I'll give you a real life scenario of a type of buyer, and you tell me what you think.
Okay,
would be
I
a
like
good.
it.
Would
and this
be
is
a
that
good,
looking within you were talking about. Yeah.
All right. So, Rob, first time home buyer with a limited budget calls you up.
First time home buyer with a limited budget, like they have low cash or limited budget because their job is they're not making buckets of cash in their job.
Actually, they're not making buku buckos.
Okay, buku buck.
Buku buckos.
They ain't making buku buckos. Give it to me. Oh, that's it. Cool. They're not making much. Do they have a lot of cash saved up?
I'm going to say they have enough for their down payment.
They have enough for their down payment. What do they do for work?
They have a steady 9 to 5.
Steady 9 to 5. Are they trying to grow in it?
Yes.
Do they want
young professional trying to grow and has aspirations and
for alternative forms of income?
Climbing the ladder.
Oh, climbing the ladder. So is he dedicated to work?
Yes.
Or would he like to add extracurriculars to his side hustle? Or
Dedicated
to work? Yeah, I'd buy a townhome.
Townhome?
Yeah.
Okay. Versus condo?
Yeah, I mean, I still think if it's a young individual, chances are they might be a little bit more motivated to paint. I don't want to be ageist or anything. Absolutely. I wouldn't look at it as a young individual, but you said a young professional. Usually a young professional drives in the kind of more ambitious attributes. So they might be motivated to paint, do their own yard, play with the property a little bit more, but they might not be motivated to handle all the annoyances, right? So if you get a townhome, you're going to have that HOA backing you up on a lot of the heavy atmospheres. Do keep in mind, most townhomes do not share utilities, so they'll still be required to cover their water, required to cover their, water heater, HVAC, maybe their AC unit outside and furnace on the inside. Why did you think condo?
I was just curious on your opinion.
Well, I'm curious.
Well,
on
and
your
say
question.
solely focused on professional, typically maybe living a fast lifestyle, maybe traveling a lot.
Yep.
However the case may be. Again,
true.
a condo, the goal is
Well, they're
not
not
to...
traveling a lot.
Well, we don't know.
Well, they just have enough for their down payment, and they're not making
But what if
buku
they're traveling
buckets.
for work? This guy. Think inward.
You said it was a 9 to 5.
Do 9 to 5s not travel for work?
Well, that wouldn't be a 9 to 5.
Do you not know how corporate jobs work, my friend?
But wait, if you're a 9 to 5 and you travel for work, wouldn't you be there overnight?
Yeah, but do you think you're getting clocked in for those hours, my friend?
Wait, maybe.
I
would.
When's the last time this guy worked for a corporation?
But if you got to think about it, a 9 to 5, I would think would be somebody who doesn't travel. No? What do you think?
If I was to think of like a 9 to 5, I'd think you'd go somewhere and clock in
Yeah.
at 9 and you leave.
Sanj is a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
But she doesn't travel. I could see.
Oh
it
my
both
goodness.
ways.
All right. We're real estate agents. No one obviously understands corporate world here. All right. Next.
Wait, I want to
scenario.
look it up. All right, next one.
I could
Go.
be wrong. All right. Young couple, recently married, looking to settle down, potentially have a child. They
Okay.
both have steady jobs.
Okay.
And they had, let's just say they just moved to a new city.
Young
Got a
couple,
steady job.
got married, got a city job. Did they move for work?
Moved for work, but they know this is going to be long term.
They're going to be here long term.
And they want to
work
start a
for-
family in the
They
city.
want to start a family, so they want to have kids. I would do.
But they're not having kids right away. They want
No.
to wait a couple years.
They want to wait a couple years. Do they both work heavy?
I'd say one of them does, one of them does their job because they enjoy it.
Okay, super invested. One side, the other just likes to work. I would house hack. What do you think?
I agree.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I know.
Before that child comes
Before
out.
that
Even
child.
you
You gotta live on the property for 1 year.
Yep.
And if you have a kid, if they don't want a house hack and they don't want to open up that can of worms, I would at least look at a fee simple property in a good walkability area, because traditionally people that want to start a family, even though they buy that house with the objective of owning it forever, statistically they're going to own it for 5 years, 5 to 7 years, and then they're going to be like, I just want a better room or something like that. And if you want to turn it into investment, make sure it's got good walkability.
And
what were you saying?
I will say, if you can time it right, and you are a young couple who is just now planning on get married or have
Yeah.
made the decision but haven't gotten it done yet, and you plan on house hacking, maybe do it before whenever you get married. If you plan on house hacking or buying a property, and then a few years down the line buying another property, how would you say that would work as far as gaining the first time homebuyer benefits?
Well,
From a lender's
if
perspective.
so if you're a first time home buyer, you can utilize those benefits. Watch our podcast 2 episodes ago with Matt. He answers this question. But if you're a first time home buyer, you can do house hacking as long as you're going to live on the property for 1 year. If you add a new buyer to the loan and they're a first time home buyer, you can utilize those benefits again. Obviously, check with your lender to confirm everything. But yeah, you can. So use them when you get them. Right, they're there.
Actually, when we were I was in Florida last week. We were meeting up with some old friends of mine, and when they had moved to Florida, same age as me, they had moved to Florida. They both bought a property.
Yeah,
In each other's. I don't know if they were married at the time yet, but they were together, and he bought a property under his name. She bought a property under her name. Completely different properties, right?
Yep.
Why? Because they both got really great first-time home buyer benefits.
Beautiful.
They've ended up selling one. Now they live in one of them. But
Yep.
they both, and they came out ahead on that first one because of their timing, their situation, and they both took a really heavy advantage of those first-time home buyers, and they were together, and they lived together.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, they probably did it a year apart. And the reason Chad's saying they did it separately, you just don't want to be on that mortgage as well. But yeah, I guess now that I think about it, they have to do it separately because technically he could still be on her mortgage or he could be on his mortgage. Even if he bought a house, as long
Sorry,
as
we
the
might be
other
confusing
person.
people.
No, yeah, it's just as long as the other
Speaking
person.
of Chad
yeah.
being in Florida, I think we should acknowledge the fact that he's now a fiance.
Oh, yeah. When did you say you were in Florida?
Yesterday.
Oh, yesterday's podcast?
Congratulations.
Well, congratulations. Yeah, let's
Thank
see the
you.
ring.
Uh-oh.
Oh, that's right.
The
He
boy
had.
doesn't
I
know
haven't
what
even
it
got one yet. Can you believe that?
But yeah.
But yes, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
She was.
We'll throw a pic in there of
She's been resilient.
the moment.
She powered through. Chad had to pay her a ring. No, definitely congratulations. Super excited. What was I gonna say? So can I ask you the next one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is it? I want to see.
It's
Are you
gonna be
plugged in?
an easy one.
Oh, is it really? Which one? This one? Okay. Somebody trying to build wealth.
Which I don't love that scenario.
Okay, I'll mix it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody trying to build wealth off of the stock market and lottery tickets. And
Well-
they own
Well,
4 dogs.
I could tell you right now, degenerate gambler does not have a ton of cash laying around.
They have 4 dogs too.
I think this individual should reevaluate their life. No, I mean, what kind of job do they have?
They just adopted another dog while you were talking to me. Now they have 5 dogs. They work.
Does he work in the stock
He's a
market?
vet.
He's a veterinarian that has 5 dogs, so good steady job.
Good steady job.
Has invested in the stock market and loves to gamble.
He doesn't love to gamble. He's never gambled in his life. He just makes sure he drops $100 a week on lottery tickets. So I guess he gambles there, but he's never been to like a casino or play
So
poker.
he doesn't strike me as the type of guy that likes to do yard work or maintenance. No, I don't.
He did say he loves to do yard work, but he's never done it before.
This guy needs a single family home because he's not taking anybody else down with him. No. I mean,
Nobody
that's
wants those 5 dogs.
a ridiculous scenario, but house hacking, I don't, or the investment side is
Yeah.
not going to be beneficial because the individual is going to probably end up spending money that should be towards the property for something else.
Yeah, and then he'll end up screwing over a tenant or something
I
like
think
that.
he should buy a nice horse stable out in the middle of nowhere
For his 5 dogs.
with his 5 dogs, and hopefully he hits on the lottery one day.
So obviously he couldn't do condo or townhome because there was probably going to be an HOA that would outlaw a certain amount
The
of
5
dogs.
dogs.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if he's not good with money, you're right. He probably should invest in a single family fee simple absolute, because if he gets something where he has to pay HOAs and
Or any assessments or any fees?
yeah, or things like that where it's a reoccurring fee after he owns the property, who knows if he's going to be good at keeping up with those things, and then unfortunately he could lose the property due to things that technically were out of his control.
And
right.
he just, hopefully this individual is really good at the stock market.
Okay. Yeah. I like it. All right. This is the final one. Busy professional. Just busy professional. In fact, so busy, they're overseas right now. They want a place to come home to. You have to talk to them at 10 o'clock because they're opposite time as you are. And they own 7 dogs. No, they don't own any dogs. But they're super busy. And he's getting married in 6 weeks.
I mean, it's for the sole fact that he's traveling and he's overseas right now, he only wants a place to go. I mean, condo.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you're going to be gone for months at a time, there's going to need to be someone. If it's not going to be a condo, you need to have someone that's going to at least maintain the yard or the property. It's some low level maintenance to some extent, right? Especially, again, even if you're in a single family home, even if you don't do some of those things, your HOA will come after you. But again, months at a time, You just want to stick with the condo. Stick with the condo. Let some of that maintenance be handled by.
That's what you were about to do. But as you were saying that, he then told you, the girl I'm going to marry is an eBay guru reseller. And she wants to leave that and enter some kind of other ambitious career that involves tech savviness.
That doesn't change anything.
Well, here's my theory. They buy a normal townhouse and then they Airbnb. No, I guess they buy a duplex and they Airbnb some of it out. And she handles all that.
But it's not zoned for that.
Yeah, if you bought a duplex, it could be zoned for that. You do a short-term rental.
Could be.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just thinking outside the box.
All right, we've been blabbling way too long.
How long are we in?
We're at 45 minutes, boys.
45 minutes. We'll bring it to an end. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. My name's Robert.
My name is Chad.
My name is Chad.
My name is Chad.
This is Intellectually, the podcast or show where we teach you how to hold us professionals in real estate accountable. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys.